And so welcome to our second Happy Melly seminar speaker series. This is something that we've started just recently, and it's for members only. It's exclusive talks with leaders in their field, and like Jurgen Appelo. So Jurgen is our speaker this month, and I'm just going to let him take it away from here. And Jurgen, I know you have something prepared, and then going to be some questions and answers. So yeah, take it away, guys. We've got 45 minutes, and so this is an intimate, interactive evening.
All right. Okay. So, well, thank you everyone for joining. I am working on a new project that gets me really excited, and I wanted to show you a couple of things and share some ideas and get some feedback, basically. I wanted to start with like 20 minutes overview of background, my thinking behind it, what culminated into this project, and then maybe you can we can turn into a Q&A and see what else comes up. So I'll share my screen. Let's see, where do we? All right. So you should be able to see now my presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Perfect.
Yes.
So let me just scroll through the slides. It's the presentation is not finished yet. This is a work in progress, as all my presentations basically. But I find it useful to help me explain the background of how I came to where I am right now. As I'm sure many of you know, I travel around the world quite a lot, and I will be in Australia in a couple of days, which is awesome. And I get a lot of questions from people, and those questions tend to be very similar no matter where I go across the planet. One question that I get is, for example, how do we scale agile principles to large organizations? Because, well, personal maps and Kudo cards is all very nice, but how do you do that when you have 30,000 people? Well, that's a good question, I suppose. Sometimes people ask, how do we stay agile when we're growing very fast? I was at a company in Germany that was a couple of hundred people 3 years ago, and now they are 2,000 people. Well, try to stick to your agile processes. Then I can imagine that's difficult. Another question: how do we optimize success and create new products concurrently? Because on the one hand, we have to optimize our current products, and on the other hand, we also have to innovate and create new products at the same time. And that's a bit difficult. So I found a couple of videos. Let me try to start this. This is fun.
Je peux me transformer comme je le veux.
Do you see my video? Does anyone recognize this from a long time ago? That's Barba Papa.
Yeah, Barba Papa souvenir.
Yeah.
Barba Papa.
And this?
Oh, Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes, Deep Space Nine, indeed. And I'm sure you recognize this one.
Terminator. Terminator 3, I think.
Yeah. T-1000 from the second Terminator movie. So these are all examples of shapeshifters. In storytelling, many authors have this passion for things that can change form, which is a fascinating idea. And that gets me to the topic of the form of the organization. There's a famous expression: form follows function. When you design something, you have to keep in mind the purpose of that thing, and then the form has to serve that purpose, obviously. But the problem is with companies, the goals change frequently. So function also follows form. A changing purpose means that you have to change your shape, basically. If your company has to start offering new products, new services, it will have to reshape into a different form. It has to be like Barba Papa or like Odo in Deep Space Nine or the T-1000. And that reminds me of Conway's law. I'm sure some of you know that law, that organizations that design systems are constrained to produce the designs that are copies of their structures. So we have to really think about the structure of the company, because that has a huge impact on the products and services that we offer. So that's my first conclusion. I will show you a couple of conclusions in a big black slide. Together those conclusions will form the basis of my new project. So one conclusion is to deal with changing goals, organizations have to be shapeshifters, basically, like Barba Papa. We have to change form all the time. Another topic that leads to a new conclusion is the trends that we are confronted with. We have the trend of accelerated change. Things change much faster now than they did a couple of decades ago. I think that's quite cliche and obvious. Everyone recognizes that. Another interesting thing is network individualism, that people join themselves they choose themselves which groups they want to belong to. That is different from like maybe 50 years ago, where your groups were predefined basically according to your social status and your parents, etc. And now you choose what online and offline groups you belong to. Another trend is the creative economy. It is not about knowledge anymore, because knowledge is everywhere. It is at our fingertips. The knowledge is available, so we don't have to store it in our heads, but we have to be creative, use that knowledge. That is what the 21st century is about. Another trend is work-life integration. Life is all about balancing work and play, not work and life, which is a bit silly because we also live when we work, in my opinion. So it's about balancing work and play, both in our jobs and outside of it. And the last one is the micro multinationals. People work in the global gig economy, as we see around us all the time. There are these huge platforms where people write. All right, can someone, Tony, can you turn off your microphone, please? Because you're making a bit of noise there. Micro multinationals are people working in the global gig economy, and we see that all the time. So another conclusion is to change faster as a business. People have to join self-formed groups, run experiments and be creative, integrate work and play, and across organizational boundaries. So that's another conclusion that I have, and we'll get back to that near the end. Another brief topic is that of methods and frameworks. I'm sure you recognize some of these: holacracy, Kanban, SAFe, less, etc. Lots of them out there. Very useful models. Many people try to play with them and implement them, but there are a couple of problems. And one of these is that they often are static collections of good ideas. There's an official definition, and that's it. It doesn't often change with some of these frameworks and methods. And usually they focus on practices, not on the why behind the practices. So that is a danger with people implementing Scrum, for example. Let's take that one as an example. People just do the daily stand-ups, and they have no idea anymore why that practice is part of that framework in the first place. They lose track of the why behind the how, and that is a danger with all those frameworks. And last but not least, they can be quite dogmatic sometimes in their suggestions of what practices to use. I find that a specific problem with holacracy, for example. There are some good ideas in there, but there are also some very dogmatic suggestions for how to run meetings and everything. So to put it in a challenging way, methods and frameworks suck when they don't force people to adopt and evaluate and ditch their own codified practices in a continuous way. That is, when they are interpreted as static things, then they suck. They are great when you see them as starting points for continued evolution, where basically people move away from the methods and frameworks or try to integrate them. So we had the 3 conclusions already. I think I have 2 more. Another one starts with this. Who decides to introduce a practice? Let's say it is daily stand-ups, or let's say it is culture books. I just blogged about culture books a couple of days ago. Or what about double linking between teams, which is a practice advocated by holacracy and sociocracy, for example. Who decides to introduce such a practice? Is that the team itself, or is that management? Is it command and control? That would be on the one hand, that would be red on this scale. Or is it fully self-organized? That would be level 7, that would be the team. Or maybe it is somewhere in between. I'm sure some of you recognize the 7 delegation levels here, which of course I simply borrowed to explain this. Quite often, these choices are somewhere in the middle of the scale, and sometimes they are on the extreme left or on the extreme right. Now, what I find important that there are dozens of practices that teams work with, hopefully, whether it's just culture books or daily stand-ups or hackathons or whatever it is that they do. They decide to apply a certain practice that is a good practice as suggested by maybe a method or a framework, but who makes that decision? Well, I think that decision is made on a practice by practice basis. And depending on where you end up, on the left side or on the right side, you have a hierarchy or a network. You have centralization or decentralization. You have an efficient way of making decisions. If you delegate it all to a central authority, that is efficient. Or you have an effective way of making decisions when everyone decides for their own local context what is the best solution. That is effective, but it is not efficient. You have specialization or you have generalization. Exploitation of a business model or exploration of alternative ideas. You see, it is the same scale every time, in my opinion. And this scaling decision has to be made, I think, for each and every individual topic, each and every individual practice that you are adopting from maybe one of those methods or frameworks. So another conclusion that I have is that this is basically agility. Agility is not about moving from control to freedom, having all those decisions move from the red part to the pink part of the diagram. No, it is about figuring out what is the best place to make this decision depending on our current environment. Because sometimes you have to be very efficient and make fast decisions for lots of teams, and then it makes sense to delegate that decision to some central authority, like the group of product owners, for example, will make a decision across all the teams for all their product backlogs or something like that. That makes it efficient. Sometimes you want it effective by having all the teams take care of their own autonomous decisions. It depends on context, and I think that is what agility is about. So balancing between those scales, and that is about shifting between control and freedom, basically. Last part, nearly, and then we go into the Q&A, or then I will show you the idea and move into the Q&A. Traditional change programs usually fail. There's a lot of statistics about failed change programs. Some people say 70% of change programs fail. Others say this statistic is nonsense. Jason Little, for example, with his Lean Change program, Lean Change Management brand. I don't care that much who is right or who is wrong. The problem is that there is this perception that change is often very, very hard. People resist change, and change transformation programs don't work. There are all these complaints from top managers. I have done a bit of research and I found at least 40 different reasons why those change programs fail, from not having a sense of urgency to not measuring progress, lack of trust, lack of awareness of context, etc., etc., etc. Many problems. But change happens all the time, and that is a strange thing. Like I often share the silly anecdote of me being in New York last year in the summer. I was promoting my Managing for Happiness book, and I was sitting at Union Square one evening reading a book, and there were lots of people around me, and they had lots of different skin colors and body types and clothes and languages, but everyone at that time was playing Pokemon Go. It was ridiculous. Everyone was walking around with their smartphones, looking for monsters. I sat there and I thought, how is this possible that in such a short time so many people change their behaviors and start hunting for monsters in public parks? That was such an eye-opener for me. So I realized that people have no problems changing at all when they want to. When they like playing a game, they have no issues changing their behaviors. When it is about buying a smartphone and trying out new apps, they have absolutely no problems changing their behaviors and exploring new opportunities. What people have a problem with is when others, usually managers, say, this is a change that I impose on you, and people have absolutely no idea why, and they so don't see the point. Then indeed you have a problem. So I thought back then, where is the adventure and fun in organizational change? Why is change itself not a game? Why are so many? Where are the small rewards for making small step progress? For example, that individuals and teams achieve in their improvement efforts. Where are the big celebrations for achieving new skill levels? I have seen them in companies. Everyone, please turn off your microphones. Thank you so much. Thank you. Organizations don't need frameworks; they need fun and fireworks, in my opinion. So that is one conclusion that I had. It has to be fun. Now, this is an improvement cycle, visualized as a simple Kanban board with 6 statuses, and the improvement cycle, we can turn that into a cycle of creating habits, where it starts with a trigger, the trigger of the new habit. Like, I have a habit of running 3 times per week, and for me the trigger is when I have time available during the day, and I have no appointments, and the weather seems nice. Then I go out for a run, and I have this target of I have to run 3 times. That is how I gamified my own behavior, basically. The behavior is in the middle part of the improvement cycle, and the reward should be at the end. Somehow we have to be rewarded, preferably with intrinsic rewards like honor, status, curiosity, mastery, etc. But sometimes small extrinsic rewards can be useful to trigger the intrinsic ones. That is how games usually do that, with points and badges and things like that. They are small, meaningless extrinsic rewards that trigger the intrinsic ones. So I think there are hundreds of topics, thousands of practices, and we all should find out how to gamify them and turn them into habits. Now, there's a lot of discussion about rules. Usually in organizations, I don't think people are not driven by rules, they are driven by habits. What gets me running is not the rule that someone wrote for me in a book, it is my habit that I developed myself, which is a different thing. So we have to aim for habit building in teams, I think, and that we can do that by having them play games. So by including all these topics and practices, and by making some of them structural topics, and by that I mean, what does team membership look like? does team get formed? How are teams linked between each other? Those are structural topics. Holacracy has some suggestions for that. Sociocracy, the Spotify model, has some suggestions with squads and tribes and guilds and chapters, for example. If you include those structural topics, and you turn them into a game, and you turn them into habits, then I think the organization can become this shapeshifter that we are after. And I think this is how agility can scale in large organizations and also in small ones. Summarizing, to be agile and innovative at scale, organizations have to be shapeshifters. That is how I started, by continuously reusing practices from good methods and frameworks, shifting between control and freedom on this scale from 1 to 7, similar to the delegation model, making all these small improvements fun with gamification, and turning those behaviors into habits with a habit forming process, trigger, behavior, reward. So I am trying to develop this into a project, and I call it Agility Scales, and there's a prototype already on agilityscales.com. And the idea is basically that it looks like this. There's this Kanban board of topics and practices, and things move from the left to the right, and the people are incentivized with points and badges, and whatever we can achieve, status and honor, we will trigger. The more people achieve progress in this on this platform, the more we can unlock in terms of privileges and things that they can do. And finally, we could offer some progress, for example, to the teams, to coaches, to managers, about which teams are improving, how fast, who are the leaders in continuous improvement, and who are the laggards, who aren't doing anything. What is the balance between control and self-organization across all these different topics? What are the popular topics? What are the unpopular ones? And you could also define a backlog of topics and say, these are all the ones that we want to cover, maybe within a year or something, and then tick them off the list and measure how far they have been implemented. And then you could have a burn down chart for your transformation project and say, well, according to this burn down, we should be ready with this transformational effort by that date, more or less. As I said, this is an idea. Still, it's an idea phase. I'm looking for people to work on this and join me as team members, so you can apply. I have a hiring process going on. But most importantly, I am continuously looking for input, for ideas, for suggestions. Maybe people say, hey, I know another app like that, you should check it out. Or I think this has already been done by others, whatever. So I will stop sharing my screen and go back to all the people who are patiently watching and waiting for their turn. We have about 20 minutes left, so I say raise your hand and shoot me a question or a comment. Who wants to be the first?
Well, I'll just firstly say, well done. I mean, it's pretty incredible and intricate.
Thanks, Sam.
Are you planning on turning it into an app as well, like a mobile app?
Yeah, that's the first priority, is to make it a mobile app. I want people to, I envision that someone sits with their team somewhere in a certain situation, feeling frustrated, like sitting in the meeting and thinking, oh my God, what the hell am I doing here? This is wasting my time. That would be a trigger for the app to take out your app and type meetings. How can I improve meetings? Well, the app has some suggestions for that. We borrow those ideas from several methods and frameworks that have suggestions how to run your meetings better. You won't be able to improve that specific meeting, but you could make the next one better by starting this improvement process. And so yeah, I think an app is the most obvious thing to develop, because that makes the threshold lower to reach out and start improving something that annoys you or frustrates you or that you are unhappy about in an organization, I think. And that is where we should try to be. The moments where people think we can do this better, whether it is a better meeting or a better prioritization process or a better backlog or a better performance appraisal, whatever. There are these moments where people think this sucks. We have to unsuck this somehow. Then take out your smartphone and start an improvement cycle.
I have a question.
All right. Yes, I see two hands. Let's Kate first and then Marianne.
Thanks. Do you think, is your idea to be able to share ideas across organizations, or do you want to make, okay, so it will be open network?
Yes, my idea is to make this an open and free platform by default, where anyone can sign up and improve individually or with their team, even if it's just one team in a huge organization, because I believe change can start anywhere with any team. But then, of course, there will be interest in reports or advanced features. Some organizations will prefer that their data is not being used. Well, then there should be paid tier plans, of course, for those extra privileges. Similar to Slack and Trello, where 90% of the users use the free versions and 10% of the users pay, and they basically pay for everyone.
Great.
Right.
Marianne, yes.
Yeah, I've just been in a communication training today, so that's where the question is coming from, really.
Right.
With all this agility and getting organizations to change faster, you have these behavioral styles where people are more comfortable and more inclined to be, well, what we would call probably control freaks, but in the positive sense of that word. Is this a framework, or what you're thinking of, is that more geared towards the extroverts? And if so, how would we incorporate the more controlled, relaxed thinking people into, well, getting them on board, basically?
Great question. I haven't thought of that. I don't know if there will be a difference between the use of a system like this between introverts versus extroverts. That will be a very interesting thing to monitor. I'm sure there will be innovators who are the first ones to pick it up, and there will be laggards who don't want to use it, and there will be lots of people in between. Yeah, I have no answer to that right.
Okay, no, fine. I like having no answers.
Yeah, but it's a fair question. It's an interesting question. It hasn't occurred to me, and we will.
Well, thank the communication training for it, because otherwise I wouldn't have thought about it either.
Well, I'm only thinking out loud here now. I think having an app as a sort of like, it is like comparable to a fitness tracker that I have in mind, right? We have these fitness trackers helping you improve yourself physically. I think when you work with people, with coaches and mentors, that is easier perhaps for extroverted people, but using tools might be easier for introverted people, because there's a slight disconnect between, there are people behind the tools, obviously, but they're one step remote, right? There's a tool in between, and that makes it easier for introverted people, I think. So, but that's just a hunch. It's a hypothesis. I don't know. Interesting topic.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a, oh, sorry.
Oh, all right. So I saw Christian's hand first. Go ahead.
Okay, so maybe first a comment. I like that there's no framework in the background, or that you remind us again that framework sucks. I'm in a big corp, and it really sucks. The only worries of some people is just to introduce a framework and they think it's the solution for everything. So I'm glad you're on the same topic, on the same point. I was wondering during the presentation if we could compare what you've presented to a sort of agile manifesto, principle and value at scale. Would it be something that we could say like this? Like, forget the framework. This is the point and value you should have if you want to scale this through a big organization.
Well, I think we should use the frameworks and methods properly, because there's a lot of value in frameworks. There's a lot of smart people behind them who try to capture their years of experience with a model, and that's a good thing. But the problem is, it is not easily transferred to another organization. You cannot just implement somebody else's framework. That's where things go wrong. So I think when we offer this more like a platform of lots of choices that you have, it's like a huge toolbox. And if we have a smart system with data from other organizations, then we could say, for example, over a couple of years, well, in health industries, the culture books tend to be successful 80% of the time. So why don't you use that practice if you want to address your core values? But we have noticed in the automotive industry, it is a very unpopular practice. They usually prefer value statements. So why don't you use that? We do not have this knowledge in the world other than coaches who have this knowledge. It is tacit knowledge in people's heads, and then they have to be aware of both the health industry and the automotive industry and able to make that distinction. So we could use data, big data across organizations, use those methods and frameworks in the way they are useful as toolboxes full of good ideas, but the platform should be offered in such a way that people pick and choose. Say, okay, I want this idea from Holacracy. I like this idea from the Spotify model, and this thing from Management 3.0 is also awesome. And then basically people create their own framework. I have a silly story card on my Trello board that says, print your own framework. There should be a button. There should be a button in the app that says, and now print this, and then you have your own framework that you created from lots of other practices.
Could I resume this, that we would have a toolbox of best ID per domain and some example where it fit well and where we should have such a practice type A from this domain?
Right, yes. So once we know more and more about the people's context, where they tried practices, with the size of the teams, the kind of product services that they make, etc., we collect that information anonymously, but there's data that we, like Facebook keeps track of things that people do. They're not interested so much in your name, but the kind of behavior in a certain context, so that they know when you're walking around in a mall, for example, and you pull out your Facebook app, then they show you different ads as compared to when you're home or something like that. That is what artificial intelligence is doing nowadays, trying to make the app better according to your context. Well, we're not Facebook. We're trying to offer something meaningful instead of just diversion with friends and family. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. But we can use similar principles, the gamification, behavioral change, and then awareness of people's context, and then make suggestions like, hey, why don't you try this specific practice? Because it seems to be working for teams with similar properties elsewhere.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great explanation. I love the idea behind it and the shopping basket principle.
Right.
And experiments stuff.
Thanks.
I love it.
We had, there were several people raising their hands at the same time. I forgot who the others were, so please raise your hand again. All right, I see Paul and then Kate.
Okay, let me get the unmute to work. Yeah, so I've been fortunate that you shared this with me really early doors, which was great because I was doing some stuff with the team for value. So thank you very much for that, guiding me straight in, which is really cool. The question I've got is really about the finish stage.
Oops. Paul froze.
Oh, that's a freeze.
Yeah, it's frozen.
Okay. Paul, you're frozen. Okay, well, let's switch to Kate and we give Paul another chance in a moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have more reflection, question, or concern.
Okay.
I love the gamification part and kind of feeling as well the competition. But going back to the sport app, I know from myself, it's very motivating when I see when I'm improving in the app. But as soon as it doesn't go that well, or if you start comparing yourself to someone that's doing better, it could have a negative impact on that team or this organization. You went very quickly through the slides there. So did you think about it, how to reward the learning, the failures as well, so it also shows, or it also is, it's also rewarding, so we don't have to succeed all the time.
Well, I can only say that I'm very naive yet in this area. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about gamification and behavioral economics at this time, but it's still early stage, just developing ideas. I think we can learn a lot from fitness trackers and similar apps, see what their experiences are, what works, what doesn't work. I do know that people are wired differently. Like, for example, I use a fitness tracker, but I don't use a social component. I reject all invitations from people to compete or collaborate because I don't want that. I compete with myself. I like that idea. But I know other people, like one of my best friends, she only wants to run what she can see how she compares with others. And she wants to see that she is the best runner, fastest runner on a certain track in the city or whatever. Fine, that motivates her. It doesn't motivate me. But we do have to take into account that different teams will, in a similar way, be motivated by different gamification tricks. So we will have to have a box of techniques borrowed from games and similar platform. And some will work for some people and some will work for others. And indeed, sometimes they may backfire in a certain way. I cannot predict in which cases what will happen, but that we'll have to learn.
If I can add to that, sorry, Kate.
It's okay.
It's one. I'm not sure whether anyone is familiar with the Stack Exchange network.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They heavily looked into this into the gamification and anthropology. Actually, they studied anthropology to come up with the structure and the badges and the points and all that. So maybe that's a suggestion. Go talk to Joel Spolsky.
Mm-hmm.
He should have a few ideas on because basically with everything you get what you put a figure on.
Right. Yeah. And I'm aware of it too. I've read articles about it. I also read that the gamification applied by Stack Exchange tends to be motivating on average more to men rather than to women, for example. Because of the points and the badges and the status, etc., where women on average, and I'm generalizing here, but that's what this is about sometimes, they tend to be more motivated by the social aspects. So we have to capture different angles on this topic. So that's fascinating. I see Paul has returned. You froze there, Paul, so I'm giving you a second chance.
Yeah, I know. I think Kate's asked the same question, but in a different way. It's how you actually get to that finish line and how that's actually shown to the user. So, yeah, Kate, you've covered it with Kate, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm learning. I have several books. I devoured several books already. Made lots of notes about great ideas that we could apply. Like, I learned, for example, just last week that there is a reason why games want you to make an avatar that looks like you, because there's a psychological aspect there. The more the avatar really looks like you, the more you feel compelled to take care of that avatar. And then they play tricks with the avatar in some games. Like if you haven't paid attention to the game for a long time, then the avatar is going to look sad and unhappy and etc. And that will be a trigger for you. They're basically like Tamagotchi all the way back to the 80s, taking care of something. There's an innate human desire, and that effect is stronger if the avatar is like a mirror image of yourself. This is gamification applied to certain games, fitness trackers, for example. Nike uses this. I read that, where you see yourself getting very fit once you have worked out a couple of times, or you become very bored and dull when you haven't worked out several times, and that triggers people to go for a run again because their avatar looks so sad and lazy. So lots of great ideas. All right, a couple of more minutes, and then we've passed our 45. I see Artyom raising your hand. Yes, go ahead.
So for the big organizations, do you imagine that each team would be able to select practices they want? Or would it be some like top level control, you know, here's the practices we think in general is good, and you could play with any of them you want?
No, imagine, take for example, a product backlog. That would be one of a few hundred topics in the platform. What is your decision as a team regarding a product backlog? Is it something that you take care of yourself, or do you delegate that decision to some other higher context that you are part of? Because it could be that you are dependent on other teams and you have to use the same product backlog tools for good reasons. You use the same platforms. So you choose to defer that decision to a higher authority, which could be the group of product owners, it could be management layer, whatever. So for all these topics, you should be aware as a team, am I making this decision myself, for ourselves as a team, or do we agree that it is better that somebody else makes that decision because it is more efficient, it is better if it's centralized because it saves us a lot of time. And let's be honest, nobody wants to be spending time on making decisions for 500 different topics. That would drives us nuts. There's also sociology here. It is called decision fatigue. People don't want to be making decisions about everything all the time. So we're quite happy to delegate decisions to management or to others. And this is the balancing act that I'm looking at, that I think it could be dozens of teams in an organization playing the game, but deciding that some decisions are better left to management or to the scrum of scrums of scrum masters or product owners, whatever. They say, okay, we're not going to do this. You take care of it and you decide for everyone else. And we're happy with that. And then you have these hierarchies forming naturally, basically. All right, I think this is it. Nearly 45 minutes. Sam, would you agree?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's perfect time. I mean, if anyone has any burning question, I don't want to cut us off, but
I don't know how, if we're really cut off at the 45th minute.
Yeah, 45 minutes is like a good chunk of time, but
okay.
If there's more questions, feel free. And if Jurgen, you have time.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, one feedback and one last question. One of the feedback is you've spoken about doing a backlog to introduce the change. I love this. I just give the feedback. We did this last year. Our manager now loves doing change process with backlog, and they have their own backlog and they love it. Mm-hmm. And my question is, I'm in a big corp which has a lot of governance. I could imagine that if we have those 100 topics, there would have to be some that we need to decide upon, choose and implement. Like I say, okay, for our governance, we have like 10 or 20 which are mandatory, and the rest,
yep,
you may not choose anything. Did you already thought about those, governance issue, Department of Defense and stuff like this?
Well, I thought about it. I haven't written anything down, but I can imagine if you have a traditional organization, some topics will be mandated, and indeed they will be read, where human resources or top management decides this is the way we do things around here for these specific topics, and that's it. But then still, I want the teams to acknowledge that they agree that this is something that they subscribe to, that yes, we take part of in whatever performance appraisals for now. That's the way it is. That is a starting point. We will improve that in the future, maybe make it more agile, but that is a war that we're going to win later. For now, we will subscribe to the performance appraisal process by human resources. We have other things to focus on, because one thing that I like about the idea of having lots of topics, even if there are 20 or 30 or 100 that are read by mandated by management, there are so many more topics that are unexplored, that are basically left open. They are free, and I think that will be an empowering feeling for teams, that they can see, oh, there's still so much that is unclaimed basically by the organization. We are going to take care of that. Like, nobody created a culture book yet. Well, we don't need anyone's permission to make a culture book. Let's make one. So, and the app will actively suggest some of these topics. Why don't you do that yourself then? Self-organize and make this happen. And that will give people the feeling that they can do something. We have to get rid of this learned helplessness in teams and organizations, where they think they can't do anything because everything is decided by management. Not true. They just don't realize that there's so much that is undefined and unmanaged. So just take control over those topics. It will make people feel empowered, and then maybe next year they can discuss the performance appraisal process that they don't agree with. But for now, they can be fine with it.
Cool, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to bring more happiness to big corporation.
All right. Any last hand going up? No, that's it. Okay, well then I want to end with, if you find this interesting, feel free to join me on the Agility Skills Slack. Reach out to me via email. Go to the website agilityskills.com. There you can sign up. And I will add you to our Slack app. And I already have more than 300, nearly 400 people joined as either players or potential job candidates. So they are already have started conversations, and it would be great to see you. Marjan, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question. Will we be getting, or might we be getting, a copy of the slides that you used?
Yeah, we can arrange that. Sure, I will arrange that through Sam.
Yeah, we can figure something out. Don't worry. And also, well, I mean, this is going to be recorded, but we'll get you the stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Thanks, man. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Back to Sam for the last couple of inspiring words.
I don't have anything inspiring after that. Really, Jurgen, that was amazing. Thank you. Really, got everyone thinking. And thank you guys for joining. This has been great. Really, the turnouts are just, getting bigger. And as far as the seminar series goes, if you guys have anyone that you want to have on, any suggestions for people or for just methods or anything like that, let us know. This is an evolving project as well. And for everyone watching, thank you for watching, and we will be back next month.